Alrighty, guys, it's Monday. It is Labor Day. The NFL season kicks off in just 3 days when the Cowboys will take on the Eagles, and it is now time for us to get these season predictions out right in the nick of time. So, I have a full power rankings video as well, which is much more of a baseline projection than what this video will be. It's much longer and much more thorough on each team and kind of tells you, like I said, where I think their baseline is, whereas this is more so what I think is going to happen. Obviously, it's predictive. But anything that I'm leaning on, maybe doubling down on a little bit extra, will be in this video. By the way, here's just a quick snapshot of what that tier list looks like. You see we got the Eagles in the inevitable tier. Should be repeat Super Bowl champions if all goes well. And then you got the Saints here tanking as really the only team tanking because at least all these other three teams have quarterbacks. And yeah, so that's the power rankings. I used PFSN's website to pick all the games for the entire regular season to determine these records, and so that's going to give us the division standings. And before we get started with that, if you could all just do me a huge favor and drop a like on the video and share your thoughts in the comments after it's over, and of course subscribe if you haven't already. So, division standings, it's always tough striking a balance between the average projections for these teams and then kind of incorporating some of your hot takes for the sort of wild cards they all have. So I did my best, and I'll find out from the comments section in this video if you guys think I'm bold or not, because last year was certainly very bold. So starting things off, we got the NFC East, and this is going to be one of the easier, at least winners to talk about, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles, as they're still definitely the best team in the NFL. The schedule, probably a little tougher than last year, but it just doesn't matter, especially being the best team. And to me, they're just set up to run it back. Not much to say about them for the regular season. I think they should be favored in most of, if not nearly all of their games. And I still think they're better than the Commanders. So I have them taking first place. Up next, we got the Commanders at 10-7. So not quite as strong as last year, but I think they will be stronger this season. It may not show in the outcome. The schedule's definitely going to be more of a challenge, and I think that's going to kind of perhaps skew some people's view of them as they get to the playoffs. They'll say, oh, they regressed a little bit. No, they're playing a much tougher schedule. So having a record anything close to what they had last year would be an improvement, right? Because it's relative. I have them, like I said, losing more games, but I think the step up, having guys like Debo and Laramie Tunsil added on the offensive side, definitely raises the ceiling. Defensively, though, I still have some questions. So I have them going 10-7 and finishing second in the NFC East. Cowboys, I have them finishing 8-9. I'm not jumping ship yet on this team, but I'm just about ready. This offense is going to be really, really great. The way that they pass is going to make it easy for them to run the ball, even if they are only working with Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, and Jaden Blue. I do like Phil Maffa, but even if it's just okay, that's fine. The offense is going to be great, but as for the defense, the floor might be a little higher since their run defense isn't going to be a total liability, but the ceiling is gone. And the Giants are just breathing down their neck, and that's our next team. The Giants at 7-10. A far improved team, especially in terms of quarterback play. They have three quarterbacks who you could argue are better than Daniel Jones, and they have a far improved defense. Especially when it comes in terms of pass defense. We all know what they've done, adding Abdul Carter and all the free agent signings. The schedule is just brutal. But they have a fighting chance in every game, and quite frankly, the Giants have had a tough schedule. This will be 3 seasons in a row. So I don't think it's anything too different from what we saw in terms of last year's schedule, and they lost like 8 one-score games. So this Giants team is going to be sneaky, and like I said, just breathing down the Cowboys' neck. Definitely an improvement step this season, but I just don't think ultimately they're going to be able to get to the playoffs. They would have to get really, really lucky, though it's not impossible. Moving on to the NFC North. Winning this division, I have the Green Bay Packers, who just made a blockbuster trade for Micah Parsons, trading away their defensive tackle, Kenny Clark. Winning the division for them is a tiebreaker between them and the Lions. As you can see, they have the same record, but I just think their ceiling is going to be a little bit higher than the Lions, especially with having Parsons. I mean, I understand the Lions have Hutchinson, but I think the rest of the Packers defense and not losing Aaron Glenn it should forecast for a stronger Packers defense. I think LaFleur is definitely the best head coach in this division. You can argue for Kevin O'Connell and Dan Campbell's certainly putting his name up there, and Ben Johnson's starting things off for the Bears. But I think you got the best head coach. Golden is looking like a wide receiver one, should fill the biggest issue for them. And then, like I said in the beginning, Parsons is just a big needle mover for them. I don't really see a huge weakness outside of wide receiver depth. Second place, we got the Lions. Nice being healthy again for them, but I do think losing both coordinators will also hurt. I have been on the record saying I think it's going to be better that they're getting all those players back, but that just doesn't mean it's completely canceled out. They're going to struggle in a few more games this year when it comes to their play calling and perhaps their defensive game plan. So I do think they're still going to have a successful season. I don't see the regression that people are sort of forecasting, losing both coordinators and kind of the disappointing playoff loss. I don't see it. They should still be just as strong as they were last year, if not potentially stronger, because they were still winning a ton of games with all those injuries. So excited to see what the Lions do this year. Up next, we got the Minnesota Vikings, 9-8. This team only really has one question, and that's quarterback. They have an amazing coaching staff, maybe the best in the NFL next to the Chiefs, with Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores running the defense. They are a completely filled out roster across the defense and on the offense too, even fleshing out the offensive line this offseason and adding a power back like Jordan Mason. It's all there. It really is. And we saw Sam Darnold succeed on this offense last year, someone who was, needing to revive their career. So ultimately, I think J.J. McCarthy is going to be good for the Vikings, and I just think it might take some time, right? And losing some of those games early on in the season while he's sort of finding his rhythm might cost them, getting second place in this division and definitely like first, because you're going to have to be ready to go at the whole start of the season. And I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just not going to project it off the bat. I think that's way more risk than what the Packers and Lions are dealing with. So I have them finishing at almost, I would say, a disappointing 9-8. I think this team definitely has the potential to win up to 12 games. It just depends on how long it takes them to get going. And then moving on to last place, we have the Chicago Bears. There's no telling what Ben Johnson and this overhaul is going to bring in year one, but my guess is it will perform. But then on the other hand, you are dealing with the NFC North. We just talked about how great all the coaches are in this division and the staffs and the rosters, and the Bears are certainly on their way. And perhaps on paper, when it comes to potential, they might have the best quarterback in the division in Caleb Williams. We just haven't seen that yet because he hasn't really had the situation to show that that's who he is. Now, in year one, with Ben Johnson and a fixed offensive line, we should get a glimpse of that at the very least. If we don't, then I think we can finally start questioning who Caleb is. But my guess is that this team actually performs pretty well, but sort of suffers inside of the division, finishing with a deceiving 8-9. Actually much better than that record, just playing pretty much the best division in football. So that's my take on the NFC North. Moving on to the NFC West. In first place, I have the Los Angeles Rams. Stafford is back, and I think if he's a little banged up, right, he's just kind of playing through it. He's a tough guy, and hopefully by the time the playoffs roll around, in between the games, he's got enough time to sort of recover passively from that injury, as long as he doesn't re-aggravate it. And if that's the case, come playoff time, this team will be extremely dangerous. Last year, we saw that they were one of the best playoff teams, especially when you kind of compared how they played against the Eagles compared to some of these other teams. So I have a lot of confidence in this team going into this year two of that defense, and Braden Fisk and Jared Verse, and then you add Devontae Adams so that Matthew Stafford can have one of those elite wide receiver duos. Pair that up with Sean McVay, I think this team could pretty much play anyone and have a good chance to win, just because of how balanced they are and how much they can control the flow of the game from an offensive standpoint. So I really like what the Rams are doing this year, and I just can't wait to see how they perform in the playoffs. And though they are a little fragile, I think they could survive maybe one or two key injuries before they completely fall apart, and then this all goes away. Up next, we got the 49ers at 11-6. So why do I have the Rams in first place? Well, first of all, tiebreakers, but I sort of wanted to make sure it landed that way because the 49ers have a much easier schedule, and if they end up, with the same schedule as the Rams, that's kind of what I want the tiebreaker to be, for you guys to see that they're versing an easier schedule and they had the same record, so the Rams are better. But they did do a massive overhaul. They have CMC back. Juwan Jennings, we don't know if he's going to play, but you still got Kittle, Ricky Pearsall. I trust him stepping into that number one role. And I just sort of like, the fact that they do have one of, if not the easiest schedule in the NFL. It's kind of hard for you to see right now. I can just move it real quick just to show you. And this team is one of the biggest benefit of the doubt teams, in my opinion, in the NFL because of their head coach, Kyle Shanahan. And since they kind of cut a lot of the loose ends that were holding them back last year, the injuries and whatnot, I think, they sort of bounce back. Their floor is very, very high. I think Robert Saleh being added as a defensive coordinator is huge because that defense definitely took a step back last year. And, I think they should kind of return to form in a sense. Maybe not Super Bowl contenders, but getting back to the playoffs. Definitely not repeating what happened last season. Up next in third place, we have the Arizona Cardinals. And this team is very, very close, in my opinion, to finally breaking through the surface. They're my number 16 team. Defensively, they're getting a lot of help back in terms of players who were injured on the defensive line compared to last year. So they're essentially getting a brand new defensive line. Guys like Darius Robinson, who barely played last year, among other names like guys like Josh Sweat. And then you got Jonathan Gannon, coaching this defense. And you kind of have Kyler, trying to work through that connection with Marvin Harrison. That's definitely going to be a wild card. But I think with all the dome games that they play this year, they're going to be able to kind of, lean on their running offense and kind of set up a lot more of that, big passing plays to Marvin Harrison Jr. and, sort of figure it out. This division is definitely not as hard as the NFC North. I'd kind of view them a little bit more like the Bears, where they'd be going 8-9. But I think, they get an extra win out of this division because it's just not as difficult. And I have those Bears and Cardinals teams right next to each other. So you see kind of the logic behind the results of their records. And, I'm just excited to see what Jonathan Gannon does with this defense. I always felt like it was, so bad, but then they were playing so well the past 2 years. I've been impressed, so I'm excited to see what he does with, what he's actually tried to build up. And then finally, in last place, we have the Seahawks. I love Mike Mack. I love this defense. And I love Clint Kubiak coaching the offense, but I just hate the offensive setup the way it is. Gray Zabel should be able to help the interior pressure that's been, the interior protection that's been a problem for a long time. But is it enough to give Sam Darnold the protection he needs to play competently? I don't know. Some offseason plans fail, and, we look at it in hindsight and feel like it was easy to see coming. I feel like this one's just staring us in the face. Similar to the Giants, I feel like this Seahawks team, the defense is going to give them a shot in every game, but I just don't think they have a great offensive floor to consistently win. Cooper Kupp and JSN kind of play the same role, and, they kind of work off of timing, routes, and quick throws, and, a reactive quarterback who's very precise, and I just don't really see that out of Sam Darnold. So I don't understand, outside of establishing a strong run game, what they're going to be able to do. Not very excited about the offense for the Seahawks this year. Moving on to our last division in the NFC, that's the NFC South. We got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers finishing in first place. I really don't feel like there's a lot to say about this team winning this division. Some offenses are coming up, like the Falcons and the Panthers, but they're clearly the best offense and best defense. So, and Baker's the best quarterback in the division right now, will probably still be by season's end. They have playoff experience, and I just think they're a dangerous team that's ready to go, whereas the rest of these teams are all still proving themselves. So up next in second place, we have the Atlanta Falcons. I feel very similarly to the Cowboys about this team, or like the Bengals, but more so the Cowboys because they have a very unproven staff. They do have a great offensive roster that has a lot of talent, and a defense with some pretty major questions, stopping the run and the pass. So it depends on a lot. I do believe in this offense. I do believe in Michael Penix, Bijan London, Pitts. The offensive line is pretty good, but I'm just not sure I believe in everything else, right? And that's a lot, right? We don't know how we feel about Raheem Morris. Even the play calling for the offense with their offensive coordinator is, kind of questionable. They did switch over from Cousins to Penix, so we'll see about that. And then, like I said, with Raheem Morris and this defense, they just traded a lot of capital to make sure they get 2 edge rushers. So that's a lot of risk and variance, potential outcomes with how this defense could be. It's just a lot that you're betting on for them to really be good. But I have them at a good record at 8-9. So I think that would be pretty solid, even though it's kind of similar to last year. I just think full season with Penix, plus or minus 2 games with that record. So there is light. It just things would have to tumble their way. In third place, we have the Carolina Panthers, and this one hurts me to have them here at 6-11. It really does. This team has major promise to beat this record projection. It's just kind of how it shook out. When I pick the games, I just don't see them making the playoffs or being that close. Not that it's impossible, but this offense would really have to click. And there's an avenue. I mean, the offensive line is not the Buccaneers, and it's not the Falcons, but it's not too far off either. Chuba Hubbard is a good running back. You have Trevor Etienne. And then, the defense, we know it has its issues, but I just think the offense is going to have to carry it. Dave Canales gets his number one weapon for Bryce Young in Tatoria McMillan. Tetaroa, however he wants it to be said, because he doesn't want to be called Tet. He's got to make us all say his name. But anyway, yeah, he's got the number one wide receiver. I think the offense can be good, but we don't even know if Derek Brown coming back is going to be that much help for this Panthers defense. He's had plenty of time to recover, but, tough lower body injuries for those defensive tackles. It's like, how do you feel about that? And like I said, this is just kind of how it shook out. Every team you can make a positive argument for, especially a lot of offenses, because people say, Bryce Young career resurgence. Well, I don't think he's necessarily going to do what Jaden Daniels did, where he just breaks out of nowhere, as much as he's just going to say, hey, I'm not holding this team back. Like, we're going to slowly take steps forward as a squad, win more games every year. And I think that's sort of what we see out of the Panthers. But this offense is very young, so I'm excited to see what it does. And then last place, this is just about what I have as projected the worst team in the league. This should come as a surprise to no one. I have the New Orleans Saints. Like I said, I have them winning just 2 games, and they could shock us, and it could be more than that. But I had a hard time picking just 2 games for them to win. And, there's random wins every year for these really bad teams, even if it's just 1. It almost always happens. So, it's not crazy to pick 2 games for them to win. And like I said, they could shock us. But there's just not really a ceiling here. Between Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck, the fragility of the wide receivers, I do like Kellen Moore as a coach, but, this team's in cap hell, and they really haven't been able to make that many moves to kind of, catalyze this rebuild. So I just think things are just going to be slow for the Saints. Most likely looking at the number 1 overall pick and this year being a wash, but we'll see. But yeah, they're projected as my worst team in the league right now, as the only tanking team in the NFL. Moving on to the AFC, we have the AFC East and the Buffalo Bills. Kind of like the Buccaneers or the Eagles. I don't feel like there's a lot to say here. We know it's all about the playoffs with the Bills. Still definitely the best team in the division. I'm not scared of any of these other 3 teams when it comes to that. I don't really think a lot changed with this Buffalo team this offseason, to be completely honest. They did add players. You do have guys like, Keon Coleman and other guys in last year's class entering year 2, but it just, did they really add a difference maker? Like the Ravens added Henry last year, clearly made them much better. You move on from Von Miller and you pick up Joey Bosa, but you got the Packers trading for Micah Parsons, and I'm sure, they only had a opportunity to do that in the past, week and a half when that was sort of going down. But I don't know. I just don't feel like, the Bills are still an amazing team. It's just like, did they really do what they needed to do this offseason to add some difference makers? Second place, I got the Miami Dolphins at 8-9. They will win some games when they're healthy. They're one of the most explosive offenses when they're healthy. So hard to stop and game plan against. You can really get outmatched if you just got 1 or 2 guys on that defense who can't keep up with the misdirection. And but they just probably won't stay healthy. And, I feel bad saying it. I like all the guys on this offense. Tua, Tyreek, Waddle, Achane. Yeah, Jonnu Smith there last year. He's gone. But I like all those guys, but they're all very injury prone. And last year we saw just about every single one of them miss time at one point or another. I think it's okay if Tua stays healthy and the offensive line stays healthy. You could survive losing 1 or 2 of those weapons, but ultimately it's just, I think I'm kind of sick of being fed the same narrative with this team every year, because I don't even disagree with it, is that even if they make it to the playoffs, they're just not going anywhere. The second they play a cold weather game, they're going to get wrecked. Now, this team does have talent, and they're trying to build through the trenches, starting this year. But if we don't see some steps forward in that area, they might have to reconsider the whole Mike McDaniel-Tua marriage, whether it's letting go of one of them or letting go of both of them. It just seems like there's no light at the end of the tunnel for this Dolphins team, especially with the Bills, being in there. Second or third place, we got the New England Patriots. I like what they're building here, I really do, but I don't think they finish 7-10 if they're playing against an average schedule. I don't like the fragility of this O-line. Will Campbell was a good addition, but, how much is that really going to help year one? It's, excuse me. They did add some weapons. I do like Kyle Williams. Diggs was pretty solid last year before he got hurt, and he's been healthy and practicing. And I like adding Travion to pair with Ramondre so that you have a nice run game to pair with this defense. But like I said, I just feel like this offense is kind of fragile. And even though Mike Vrabel is a huge plus to the defensive floor and the ceiling, I think it's just going to take time for this defense to kind of really turn into an elite unit that can sort of make up for when the offensive talent isn't really producing that much for them and sort of win some games that way. So that's where I have the Patriots looking up, but they do have like the second easiest schedule in the league, and I think they take advantage of that. Last place, it hurts me. You guys know I love Justin Fields, but I just have a bad feeling about this offense. I really do. The O-line is better than Seattle's. It definitely is. But at least we've seen Sam Darnold play competently for a whole season. Now, granted, that was in Kevin O'Connell's offense, but I'm not even sure if Fields could do that because that's a very pass-heavy offense, and we know that's not what Fields is great at. So, like I said, I love him, but I just don't think there's enough help for him out there. I love Brees. I think Garrett Wilson's really good, but you need a wide receiver too. They have the tight end, Mason Taylor. Maybe they're hoping he can sort of step up as a second option. Justin Fields does like his tight ends, like Cole Kmet back in Chicago, but I just don't see a valid reason to project them as an offense above any other offense. And I do feel solid about their defense. I think Aaron Glenn is a good, he's obviously a good defensive coordinator stepping into this head coach role. But we'll just kind of see how it all shakes out because there really isn't a whole lot proven about much of any of this team. Moving on to our next division, the AFC North. At first place, I have the Baltimore Ravens, and I rank them as my second best team in football on paper in my power rankings. Very similar build to the Eagles, just without the wide receivers. They should easily take this division. I mean, the Bengals are always a thorn, but you are a much better team than the Bengals are, and you should be more matchup proof versus other teams outside of this division. So even though they might give you a hard time, you should play better throughout the rest of the regular season. So we know it's all about the playoffs, just kind of like the Bills. So let's move on to our next team. Second place, we got the 10-7 Cincinnati Bengals. Despite all the noise about the bad defense, which is not very good, one of the worst in the league, actually, they did get their pass rushers signed. So they are back. Trey Hendrickson and first-round pick Shamar Stewart. That should definitely help. Obviously, just if you can't raise the whole defensive floor, at least add some playmakers who can get you some sacks and some they can end a drive in one play, right? Rather than trying to build the whole defense when it's just probably not gonna work, right? Adding a few difference makers. So, I also just having a hard time seeing this offense start as slow as they have the past couple of years. There's always been something. Joe Burrow's either been injured, there's been someone holding out for a contract, every offseason, and I've got to imagine that happening every offseason. It's hard to get ready for the season. Now, that was happening on the defensive side, but for the offense, they've all been there and practicing this whole offseason. So I've got a good feeling that they will, at least off from an offensive standpoint, start off strong for the season. And, I just think winning that extra game or two early on is going to, play out the same season. But if they beat that Patriots team, then they're in the playoffs with this record. So I see it playing out pretty similarly. It's just they win one more game than they did. So I think that's a fair projection for the Bengals. Up next, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers, super high floor team that will probably win more games than they should. But ultimately, this division, the ceiling is just so capped compared to these other teams with Rodgers and Arthur Smith. Even though it's a very safe offense to run, running the ball, hitting play action shots, it's just so conservative. And, it does play into their defensive identity. But, man, Aaron Rodgers, right? Is he going to have the restraint to let Arthur Smith call the offense? And is that even the best thing? I know we give Rodgers a lot of crap for, kind of trying to take over things, but I would say he's probably a better play caller, controlling the play at the line of scrimmage than a lot of offensive coordinators right now. Probably at least 10, right, that he's better than. So I don't think it's that crazy that, he kind of takes the reins every now and then, especially in the playoffs. Because, what do we know about Arthur Smith in the playoffs? Pretty much what he did in Tennessee with the Titans. So I just don't see them getting past the divisional round, right? I don't see them beating the Ravens, the Bills, or the Chiefs. So I could see them winning a wild card game, and that's kind of their ceiling. But I have them here at 9-8. And yeah, so that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Last place, we got the Cleveland Browns. I mean, it was messy last year, and it could get messy again this year. We don't know who their quarterback is. This whole thing with Shador Sanders and Dylan Gabriel just seems like a complete mess to me. And I get you got Flacco, who you could start initially, but how long are we going to roll Joe Flacco out there and, like, be a serious football team? I get Joe Flacco won Comeback Player of the Year 2 years ago, and, like, he's solid, and he's a good vet to teach these guys, but you took both of these guys with the idea that they would play this year. So when are they going to play, and who's going to be the starter? And I just feel like when you have that, your offensive, like, consistency is nowhere. No wide receiver is used to any of these quarterbacks. They don't have chemistry. All the other quarterbacks in the league are practicing with the same guys every day, and that's just not what's going to be going on here. And you guys don't need me to explain to you the, organizational dysfunction that, they suffer as a team. And although Myles Garrett signed, the defense has potential. No defense is good when the offense is just completely terrible. And that's what I'm worried about with this team, is the offensive line breaking down, then not having a quarterback. Jerry Jeudy's your number one wide receiver. Like, I just don't. There's a reason I have them at 2-15. Moving on to the AFC West. My first place team is the Kansas City Chiefs. I think we've seen sort of the worst of the Chiefs. I don't really think things are going to get as bad as they were in that Super Bowl again. Like, everything went wrong for them. As much as things went right for them during the season, don't, like, just assume that nothing was different during the Super Bowl. Like, they lost Chris Jones. It's the second best player on their team. Changes their whole defense. You're trying to stop the run in Saquon Barkley and, get some pass rush through this amazing offensive line, and you don't have your, essentially, Dexter Lawrence or just your best pass rusher, you're going to lose that game most likely. And then you had the injuries on the offensive line. We know about the weapons not being that great. It's just not, I don't think we're going to see that again. I think they've pivoted and readjusted, cut some loose ends, and sort of reloaded for this year. Josh Simmons on the offensive line, that's a franchise pick right there. That's the best tackle in the draft, who was obviously much healthier than everyone had thought. And now he's on the team that was in the Super Bowl last year, filling a position of need. So I think that is going to be good. What is not super convincing is defensively, are we just going to keep trusting that Chris Jones stays healthy? Because that's what the entire defense, depends on. It could happen again, right? He could miss even in the divisional round. You could miss Chris Jones, and that could cost you that game. We saw the Lions beat them week 1 before they were even hitting their stride. Why'd they beat them? Because they didn't have Chris Jones or Kelsey. And they didn't get me started on Kelsey. He's a damn near non-factor at this point. So, yeah, I got the Chiefs in first place, and I kind of like what they're doing with, like, the new era. They're sort of halfway in between. I think they can figure it out. Mahomes, the coaching staff, offensive line is still good. We'll see about the weapons. Defense, good as long as Chris Jones is there. So that's their whole situation. I think that's pretty clear, and everyone knows who the Chiefs are at this point. Up next, we got the Denver Broncos, second place at 10-7. I really like this team. They should be in line for a step forward on both sides of the ball. Could probably compete with the Chiefs, I would say, in the regular season for sure. The playoffs, we'll see. Year 2 of Bo Nix is very exciting. Sean Payton's a great coach. This defense is the best in football, and they made upgrades, adding guys like Dre Greenlaw. That's pretty scary, already on that defense. And then, you add a bunch of weapons on offense for Bo Nix and Sean Payton to make the most of and distribute to R.J. Harvey, Pat Bryant, the list goes on. And you got a bunch of guys in year 2 and 3 like Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, who are also looking to break out. This team is deep. It's great on defense. They have a young quarterback and coach who are on the same page. This team, if they were in the NFC, they would have done what the Commanders did last year. That's kind of how I feel about them. Up next, we got in third place the Chargers at 9-8, and this is just really unfortunate. I've been saying this about this Chargers team. I'm sorry, but the ceiling just left after Rashawn Slater, tore his Achilles. It's just, your ceiling's gone. I mean, you're supposed to have this tackle tandem as, like, the best part of your offense next to Herbert, right? Protecting him, letting him pass. They set the edge when they're run blocking. I don't know, man. It's just tough. You had the offseason to sort of adjust and plan for it, so you can kind of mitigate it. But when you get to the divisional round again, are you going to be able to block Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter? Are you going to struggle to do that again? Are you going to be able to throw the ball against this Broncos defense, this Chiefs defense, this Ravens and Bills defense? Are you going to be able to get these throws off? I mean, Herbert, we gave him excuses, but every season in the playoffs, it's like, he gets under duress and he looks like a completely different guy. It's kind of like how bad it is with Lamar. So I have them finishing above 500. I have them being a good team, but their schedule was a lot easier last year, and I just think, this is already a really bad start, and someone's got to finish below 10 wins in a lot of these divisions, kind of like the Vikings. So I have it being them because it's pointing to that right now. Up next, in last place in the AFC West, we have the Las Vegas Raiders. I really like this team. The weapons on offense are very exciting. Brock Bowers, rookie Ashton Genty. But the secondary is probably the worst in football, going to be a liability. But Pete Carroll and Geno Smith really raised the floor. This is probably the highest floor this team has had in a long time. I don't think they've had a coach as proven as Pete Carroll, and I don't think they've had a quarterback as good as Geno Smith for, I guess, since Derek Carr. So, and he's potentially even better than Derek Carr, at least his ceiling is. So it's still a tough division, but it would be bold to have them in second or third place. I get the way I was just talking about the Chargers might kind of insinuate that, and I'm not saying it's not possible. Like I said, they got me thinking about that, but I do think the Broncos, Raiders might be able to win one game against them, but I don't see, over the totality of the season, them outperforming the Broncos. And then moving on to our last division, we have the AFC South. In first place at 9-8, I have the Texans. And if they don't win this, it's a total choke job. I mean, the other teams have potential, but this defense is here, and it's elite for this Vikings team. D'Amico Ryans is probably the best coach, and just having that best defense paired with him is definitely something that's going to, kind of lock up this division for them until one of these other teams can kind of figure out a baseline. And Stroud's definitely the best quarterback. They have great weapons. They got Nico Collins. Mixon's hurt right now, but, he'll probably be back by the time the playoffs roll around or late in the season to help finish off some games. And it's just about the playoffs with this Texans team, because even though they're not like the Bills where they're this elite team, or the Ravens where you just feel like they're going to win the division, or not that it's not that they're an elite team, it's that that they're going to win their division. Thank you for excusing me, of course. So that's my first place team. Second place, this is where it gets interesting. You could actually pick any of these three teams, I would say, and I wouldn't call you crazy. I'm going to go with the Jags. I really like the idea of Liam Cohen, Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter. But outside of the pass rush duo in Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen, I don't really feel like there's a lot to get excited about. I mean, the O-line isn't great. The running backs, you got this collection of guys. I do kind of like Tank Bigsby, and, obviously what Liam Cohen did with Bucky Irving last year, we all love that. But, who's going to emerge? How long is it going to take to figure that out? It took about half the season for the Buccaneers. And just the defense, I mean, this team is under a new regime. So that could point to a sort of change in scenery in terms of what we're used to seeing from them. I think they could snatch this division from the Texans, but like I said, they would have to probably beat them at least once, maybe even sweep them and catch them off guard. But I really like what the potential of this offense is with Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter. Might be the best wide receiver duo in the NFL by the end of the season. We'll just see. All right. So moving on to our third place team, we have the Indianapolis Colts, really close behind. I just think the QB debate is going to haunt them somehow, like who to start. People are going to see Daniel Jones, and he might go 3-3 to start the season. Eventually, he's going to have a really bad play where it's not the offensive line's fault. They're going to call for Richardson. They're just going to feel like he's boring, right? There's more to be had with this offense. There's meat left on the bone. And then he's going to get in there, and he's going to try to do way too much. And then they're going to say, no, we just need to play a clean game of football like Daniel Jones had us doing, and then we will win more games. And you're just going to go back and forth. I think ultimately Daniel Jones is the best guy for them to just win games right now, but it's how great is that, right? I had Daniel Jones as my quarterback the past 6 seasons, and let me tell you, it's the belief is just not it's not that much belief that you have in him. You can win with him, but it's you feel like it's not because of him. You're just yeah, the team held up, so we won. It's what about when the team doesn't hold up? That's when your quarterback's supposed to show up. I don't think ARs were fine enough to do that right now, and we'll see if Daniel Jones can do it with the Colts. I'm certainly rooting for him because I would like to be right about the idea about how bad I thought the Giants team was, holding him back, and just kind of destroying his development. I mean, we've seen crazier things, right? We saw Sam Darnold turn it around with the Vikings. We saw Baker Mayfield turn it around with the Bucks. And we saw Geno Smith turn it around with the Seahawks. We could see Daniel Jones turn it around with the Colts. You never know. Last place, we got the Tennessee Titans tied with record, but placing last due to tiebreakers. But way happier about it than Indy is to be 6-11, and that's because they just had the number 1 overall pick, right? They got Cam Ward now, and he is awesome, I think. I think he's going to be awesome this year. It will take time, but the offense is going to take strides through him and through his development and maturity, because we know he's a gunslinger. He's going to want to make the big plays coming from behind. It's what he knows how to do. It's going to bite him, a couple times early on, and I think he's going to settle in and sort of figure it out. So really excited to see Cam Ward. I think he's an awesome young man, and I want him to lead this franchise forward because he's probably the best quarterback they've had maybe since the early 2000s with McNair. The defense just wants to not be awful. We'll just kind of see. They did make additions on offense and defense, kind of trying to rebuild, but I don't know. Not feeling too great about the defense. They'll steal some wins, and I think they'll smile into the next season knowing that they got a franchise quarterback on their hands. So that's our full division standings. Here's the conferences, so we can start talking about the playoff seedings and who just missed out. First of all, in the NFC, we have the Cardinals just missing out at 9-8, the Vikings just missing out at 9-8, and then the Falcons, Bears, and Cowboys not too far behind with 8 wins, probably missing the playoffs in those last 3 weeks of the season. And for the AFC, we have just missing the Chargers at 9-8. Of course, the Steelers make it in before them. The Dolphins at 8-9, and then you got a couple 7-10 teams that definitely don't have as good of a shot as they would have in the NFC. So those are our almost made it teams. And then switching over here, you can see our playoff teams and seeds. The first seed in the AFC, we have the Baltimore Ravens. And the second seed is the Kansas City Chiefs. The third is the Bills. And the fourth is the Texans, winning their division at only 9-8. And then our first wild card team, the fifth seed, the Denver Broncos. Next, the Bengals, also at 10-7 as the 6th seed, and then the 7th seed, Pittsburgh Steelers at 9-8, because they got to go above 500. They're not going to miss out on that. And then in the NFC, we have the Eagles also as the 1 seed. The Packers are going to get the 2 seed. The Bucks are going to get the 3 seed, and then the Rams are going to get the 4 seed. All at 11-6, with the Eagles winning the division or the conference at 12-5, getting that 1 seed. And then the Lions kind of suffer the same fate as the Vikings last year, probably losing a game late in the season. That is going to result in them getting the wild card rather than the 2nd seed, and that's going to be unfortunate for them. The 49ers are going to be the 6th seed at 11-6 with that easy record. And then the Commanders survive the sophomore slump, the allegations, and they go 10-7 and make it back to the playoffs. So that right there is our playoff seeding. All right, so now we're going to predict these playoff games here, starting in the AFC with the Steelers and the Chiefs. Yeah, I've seen this one before. I am sorry, Steelers fans, but I just cannot see you guys beating the Kansas City Chiefs in the first round. The Chiefs have so much more experience. Aaron Rodgers, he's an experienced veteran quarterback. He might even have some answers for that Spagnuolo defense. But is the Steelers' offense going to be able to execute and allow Aaron Rodgers to do that? I don't think so. I think the Chiefs' defense carries them through another wild card round as they keep their cards close to their chest for the next round. After that, we're going to have the Bengals at the Bills, and this is an awesome matchup. We've seen this before, too. The Bills actually got blown out in the snow, very much to the league's surprise, but I think the Bills are going to be ready this time, and they're going to expose that Bengals defense once again, and they're going to win in a shootout in this game and get revenge on Joe Burrow and the Bengals. And then we have the Broncos at the Texans. Reminds me a lot of that Chargers-Texans game last year, where you have 2 ferocious pass rushes, and it's really just going to be about whatever quarterback has better protection. Last year, it was C.J. Stroud, and the Texans. I think this year it's going to be the Denver Broncos. They have a much better offensive line than the Texans do. Their offense is built a lot more on kind of checking it down and surviving these really elite defenses and just getting the ball out quick. And I think that's going to fare well for them. And obviously that's kind of the formula for winning these close defensive games is you have to have pretty much the better performing offensive line. So I'm going with the Denver Broncos there. And now moving on to the NFC Wildcard Round, we have the Commanders at the Packers, and what an awesome matchup this is. We have the magical Commanders from last year making it back to the playoffs, proving themselves yet again, but they have to face off against the Green Bay Packers, the number 2 seed. And I love the Commanders, I really do, even though I am a Giants fan. You know, it's just hard not to appreciate what they've done and how fun and exciting they are, but I think this is the year that they run into the overwhelming roster in round 1. Rather than round 3. I just don't see the Washington defense doing as good of a job of slowing down the Packers as the Packers defense is going to do slowing down this Commanders team. Just the disruptive plays, the potential interceptions that they could get, you know, anything that the Commanders defense can do, the Packers defense can do better, and the Packers offense obviously has a super high floor. Matt LaFleur calling plays. I'm taking the Packers in this one. Up next, we got the San Francisco 49ers at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And, you know, this is where I feel like the 49ers should win based on sort of experience. Shanahan coming out of, you know, having the time and the experience he's had in the playoffs to come out with a great game plan for this first weekend. They always look so good. But I do want to keep in mind how a lot of this record of theirs is based off of my benefit of the doubt and the regular season schedule being very manageable, and that this team is still very fragile. CMC may not be playing at this point in the season. Jawan Jennings, he might be back. Is he going to be 100%? Kittle, obviously great. I think he'll probably still be there, but he can suffer injuries too. Pearsall, I think he'll be good as the one, but Ayuk, he's going to be back. There's just a lot of unknowns, and I feel a lot better about the Bucs just getting Godwin back, getting Tristan Wirfs back, and Egbuka being your number 3, right? Like, I just feel like everything's there for them. Their offensive line is better than the 49ers. Their defense might be on the same level, even though the 49ers defensive coaching will probably be better. I just think the Buccaneers are going to be a better team at this point in time. They've been in the playoffs before, and they've been dangerous. They've beaten really good teams. So I'm not just going to write them off because the 49ers have been here before. So give me the Buccaneers to win this one. And then now we have the Lions at the Rams. We've seen this one before too, and the Lions came out on top. And, you know, I'm talking a lot about how this defense should be better. You got Aiden Hutchinson and everything, but I think it's not in the regular season where these new coordinators is going to bite them. It's going to be right here when, yeah, you were able to kind of use your roster with the, you know, your whole system and organization under Dan Campbell is kind of built to win these regular season games and blow everyone out. But you get to the playoffs and it gets serious. I don't know if these new coordinators are going to be able to match up mentally with Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, right? Like, I think Stafford and McVay is a lot more trustworthy than Goff and John Morton, the Lions' new offensive coordinator, even with Dan Campbell in town. And, you know, they should have a better offensive line. It's not like the Rams is terrible, and the Rams' defense is very, very disruptive. So they're able to match up well against the Eagles, at least with everything except for, you know, Saquon in the run game. You know, I think the Lions might be able to run the ball, but I think they'll be able to cause enough disruption on defense to let Stafford make up the difference and probably have a game-winning touchdown drive or something like that. So I'm going with the Rams to take down the Lions, as even though I have the Lions ranked above them, I'm almost positive in my power rankings, I do just above them. It's just above them. So there you have it with the wild card round, and that sets us up for the divisional round matchups. Let's start in the AFC. The breakout Denver Broncos are going to take on the Baltimore Ravens, the 1 seed. And, you know, this could be like last year's first round for the Broncos, even though I think they're supposed to take a huge step forward. I just don't think they're on the same level as the Ravens. Like, the Ravens' whole roster is kind of there, just like the Broncos. And normally you'd say, oh, the other team probably has better wide receivers than the Ravens. Well, they're kind of dealing with the same thing, where they got, like, a bunch of young guys. The Ravens have Bateman and Zay Flowers. You know, they're okay, but You kind of feel like there should be a little bit more from them. Maybe it's just the system that's doing it for them. With the Broncos, it's kind of like the same thing, except for I would say Sutton would be the best wide receiver in this game. But is he that much better that it's going to give you this huge and clear advantage? I don't really think so. So, the Ravens defense is probably going to be top 5 to top 8. And that's close enough to the Broncos defense, and Lamar's. Like, he could completely wreck the Broncos game plan with him and Henry in the backfield and kind of take away that advantage that they have. Sort of similar to how we saw the Bills. They had a lot of trouble handling Josh Allen. I think this is a bad matchup for the Broncos, and maybe if it was the Chiefs or Bills, it would be closer, but I think the Ravens are going to win this one pretty handedly. And then next, you got the Bills and the Chiefs, and are we really doing this again? Yes, we're doing this again. And the Chiefs may be improved, and maybe so have the Bills. But I feel like each year, it kind of seems like the same, but I do think the Bills have gotten a little closer every year to kind of beating the Chiefs. And if they don't do it this time, I mean, what do we do with Sean McDermott, right? He's the head coach. He kind of covers the defensive side. It's felt like the defense has been what's let them down most of the times. Now, Josh Allen's missed his opportunities on offense, but are we really going to blame him for these losses against the Chiefs? I don't think so. Okay, so that's just kind of my thoughts on this rivalry in general. As for this game, the Chiefs are kind of adding new pieces in critical positions like Josh Simmons, all these young wide receivers, and we kind of saw it bite them in last year's playoffs. I just feel like, they're not rebuilding, like they're reloading, but the Bills aren't even reloading. They're just adding, right? All these guys are ready to go, and they've been here. I think the momentum from last year, it gives them a good chance to win this year, because I don't think the Chiefs will still be sort of figuring it out, but if just one or two of their players don't execute, it almost reminds me of like when they lost to the Eagles in the regular season, like 21-17, because MVS dropped a pass. Sometimes Mahomes does everything he's supposed to do right, and then actually one of the Chiefs players actually does screw up, right, and it loses them the game. That is possible, and I just kind of feel like that's going to happen for them this year. There's not like some sort of schematic reason why I think this is going to happen. I'm just thinking like probabilities, and what do I think? This is what I think is going to happen. The Bills are finally going to beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. In the divisional round, that would be Mahomes' first ever loss in the divisional round. So that would be historic right there. And I think that's definitely pretty bold, even though you would say, like, you could argue it's bold to pick the Chiefs again. But no, I think it's bold to pick the Bills. Moving on to the NFC Divisional Round. Okay, now we got Rams, Eagles again. We're doing this again. When it comes to this matchup, it should be another great one. The Rams defense did a good job of stopping everything except for Saquon last year. I do think Devontae is going to challenge Philly's secondary corner. That would be Adoree Jackson currently. Ultimately, I'm simply going to bet, though, on the Eagles' depth. I would say they once again win this game, and it's because I think at this point in the season, although the Rams, they could get hot and they could have everything there, kind of like they had last year, I think they're just more fragile. The chances that they lose something critical that causes them to, kind of not have a chance to win this game, I think the chances of that happening are much higher than something like that happening to the Eagles. And the Eagles already should be favored in this situation. So I just feel like it's a very narrow, reality that I'm choosing from. If I pick the Rams to win this game, it would have to be like the perfect situation. And I don't know. I could totally see it happening. It's just I don't feel comfortable enough picking that to happen. I just don't feel like the trenches is like that's what you never want to believe. That a team like the Eagles is going to keep winning, but the truth is, unless a team can kind of match up in the trenches somehow, it's like the chances of you winning are just super low. So I would just caution you and say, if you thought something like this was going to happen, and be like, Eagles are going to have to probably suffer some offensive line or defensive line issues that either allow the Rams to keep up or stop the Eagles from being so inevitable on offense. So that's my pick there. I think that would be a very, very wild card type game. But, that's my take on Rams. Eagles, and then up next we got the Packers, who are versing off against the Buccaneers. The Packers are home in this case. Two very just complete NFC teams, and I would really have a hard time picking this game before the Parsons trade. It's going to be an electric matchup, but I just think top to bottom, the Packers match up against the Buccaneers, and then they have Micah Parsons. Now, I would say the Buccaneers definitely have better wide receivers than the Packers do, that's for sure. but I think Matt LaFleur is a much better coach, right? And I think they have a better run game, even though the Bucs offensive line might even be better. I think Josh Jacobs is better than Bucky Irving. The run concepts they have are much more established. The offensive line is deep and they're good at it. This is just what they do. Also, like, I feel like I don't really see a world where, Baker Mayfield and their new offensive coordinator, who they always have a new offensive coordinator. I don't see them getting past Jordan Love, Matt LaFleur, this offensive line, Matthew Golden as the one. If he's healthy, then I'm like, yeah, I think, the defensive advantage you have is going to be enough to basically shut down their passing game, which they're so good at, and, force them to try to kind of run the ball and, keep up that way. But then you're playing the Packers game, limiting possessions, letting their defense just need one strip sack pretty much to win a game and stay ahead. That's what they did to the Cowboys, and Bucs are way better than that Cowboys team, but you understand what I'm saying. So I have the Packers winning this game. I think that Parsons, trade is going to definitely help them win some of these games with a lot more confidence. And now we are in the conference championship round. In the AFC, we have the Duel of the Greats Part 3, if I'm correct, because they had the 2020, I forget which year it was, but it was like the snow game where it was like 10-7 or something like that, and the Bills won. And then you had last year in the divisional round, and things were much closer, but the Ravens made too many mistakes, and they couldn't get it done. And now this is the third time around. I have the Ravens as the 1 seed, the Bills as the 3 seed. Both, assuming fair health and all that kind of stuff. I think the Ravens had a lot more improvement. They could have played a lot better. Whereas I thought the Bills kind of played their best game and, won. And the Ravens did not play their best game, and they should have been tied, right? There was that, if you even just take away that last mistake, the Ravens could have played that bad and went into overtime with that Bills team. So if that's the case, then if I'm going to project growth for this Ravens team, which I am, growth when it comes to execution from Lamar, from this offensive play calling from Todd Monken, that should be refined in year 3. The passing game, the consistency, the floor of all that should still be improving. And I just think that's going to be enough to basically beat this Bills team, because this Bills team, their kryptonite is kind of like the Chiefs, but I feel like they often don't run into teams that are better constructed than them top to bottom. This Ravens team is that. We saw them win in the regular season when all their pieces were healthy. So I also don't feel like this is that crazy. But yeah, I just think the Ravens are going to hit their peak this year. And even if this was the Chiefs, I would feel tempted to pick them, even though it's the coaching and all that kind of stuff. Do you have the guts to do it? Well, I think this is going to be a special year in year 3 of Todd Monken's offense for Lamar, because he's probably not had that that scheme coached into him until he got Todd Monken. So I think that this is just huge strides we've been seeing from Lamar. I don't know why we're assuming it's just going to stop, right? Everyone is coming back. So really excited about this Ravens team, and I'm picking them to go to the Super Bowl, beating the Bills. Brutal loss for the Bills. You finally get past the Chiefs, and then you can't beat the other guy who you already beat before. It's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. Very unfortunate for the Buffalo Bills. And now, with the NFC, we got the Packers and the Eagles. I'm pretty sure this is what I had last year. I'm pretty sure I had this last year, and I had the Packers beating the Eagles. I'm going to do it again. And you guys are going to be like, come on now, right? I mean, but here's the thing. This Eagles team had everything break right for them last year. And a big reason for that was it started with Saquon Barkley. That addition to the offense, raised everything else, right? It helped out the defense. Obviously, it helped out Jalen Hurts in this passing game, taking more pressure off of them. It helped the offensive line lean into the run game. So they had all of that going. They had the 2 best coordinators that they've had there, outside of, I guess, Gannon and Steichen. But I honestly think Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio is better. So they had their 2 best coordinators, and they had everything there. Pretty much everyone stayed healthy. Just the chances of that all happening again all the way through to the Super Bowl. I'm not saying it's going to happen in week 8, right? And they're going to miss the playoffs. That's not what I'm saying. Is that eventually, you're not going to be lucky for 2 years in a row. Over 600 days. So I just think for the Packers, when you kind of flip it around and look at them, I kind of see them as like the Eagles, right? Because you had a quarterback who was playing well in the playoffs, and you've been building around this roster that seemingly has everything, but you're kind of just missing that one superstar. Micah Parsons is like a top 10 player in the entire NFL. Saquon Barkley, I would have told you last year he's the best running back in the NFL. Being a Giants fan, right? I could have told you the athletic potential is there. I don't think he has like issues with vision or anything like that. So unless if you wanted to pick someone like Henry or CMC, I would have told you it was Saquon. So probably a top 10 to 15 player in the whole NFL, injecting that into the roster. Now they got to pretty much sign him for free. The Packers had to trade 2 first-round picks. But regardless, I would say an edge has even more of an impact than a running back. You're sacking the opposing team's quarterback. That has a lot more of a direct impact than chewing the clock with the run game, which you can do a lot of different ways. So I just feel like, I'm not saying things can't go wrong for the Packers, but I feel like they're sort of just as deep as the Eagles are at this point. We saw them still play competitively in a playoff game with their wide receiver 4 and 5. Shout out Bo Melton, but it's just, I think with Parsons here, back when the Rams traded for Stafford, when the Eagles signed Saquon Barkley, Packers getting Micah Parsons, it's staring you in the face right now. This team has been close for a while. They've needed someone like this. I think it's going to be a huge difference maker, and I'm picking them to win this game. Total coin flip. Complete another coin flip. If you want to disagree with me and say Eagles-Ravens, go for it, right? You want to say Bills, Eagles, go for it. It's I have them in the conference championships, but this is just kind of the way I see it breaking. We haven't even seen a team three-peat. We've only seen the Chiefs two-peat. It sounds crazy right now because the Eagles just won. There is a lot of time where things can change, and I think we'll finally see once we watch the Packers play for the first month of the season. And then up next, of course, we have the Super Bowl. But first, I want to just inject this very quickly. Who do I think is going to do so well that they win an award, the Pocket Award Show? Here we go. MVP, Joe Burrow. That terrible defense, except he actually makes the playoffs this time. And, battles valiantly versus Josh Allen in a shootout loss in the wild card. Even though they really typically don't do this, if he throws 50 touchdowns after the season he had last year, they're going to give it to him. Offensive Player of the Year, Derrick Henry. Lamar had 41 passing touchdowns last year. I think we see some regression, and even if it's just 4 or 5 of those going to Henry, if he breaks 20 touchdowns, then he's probably going to win Offensive Player of the Year. And it's just as simple as that, right? He's probably going to have 1,500 or more rushing yards. But when he has the 20 rushing touchdowns, I think that's really going to, sell the idea to the people voting. And then Defensive Player of the Year, feeding into what I'm saying, Micah Parsons on this defense, a running offense. This is going to have him in the right game scripts to load up sacks. I think he could definitely break 22 sacks this year. He could even potentially get 23, right? So I'm very excited because Parsons, like I said, elite, probably top 3 edge rusher in the league. Myles Garrett. I think Micah Parsons is sort of like your talent or your speed, kind of best edge rusher in the league. And then Crosby as your 3, TJ Watt, and then there's probably, I feel like there's one person I'm forgetting, and that's gonna be really embarrassing, but I'll edit that in. And then we're gonna keep it pushing and pick Comeback Player of the Year, and that's gonna be Aiden Hutchinson breaking his leg last year, coming back, helping this defense the way he's going to. I think it's pretty much a lock that as long as he finishes with like 12 sacks, he'll win Comeback Player of the Year. Coach of the Year, Matt LaFleur, after the conference championships, when he beats the Buccaneers, how dominant they're going to be looking. I think it's going to be him, and it's probably been a long time coming too. He's one of like the most winningest head coaches in the NFL right now, so I think it's going to be like, yeah, we should give it to him. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Ashton Genty, might be like Travis Hunter or Tet McMillan to see like who gets, it's usually like who gets the most fantasy points is honestly what this award typically ends up being. Unless if it's an offensive lineman. But, yeah, I got Ashton Genty. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. The way he runs his contact balance is unreal. He's going to get, like, 1 million touches. This offense is going to revolve around him. Pete Carroll loves his running back, so I got Ashton Genty winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Abdul Carter. Looks like Parsons coming out of college. Obviously, everyone knows that. But on this Giants defense, too, he's not going to, like, receive more attention than Dexter Lawrence, so he's going to be in position, especially rotating with guys to play at 100% every snap. get moved around, maximize his potential. I think he breaks 12 sacks and wins Defensive Rookie of the Year. And then Protector of the Year, the new award, Best Offensive Lineman, to me is going to go to Trent Williams, carrying that offensive line, versing this easy schedule too. I think it really increases like the chances that he's going to like finish the year with like 0 sacks allowed, 0 pressures, and all that kind of stuff, like the best run blocking grade. And then everyone's going to realize, all right, Trent Williams is probably retiring soon. We just made this award. He would have won it like 50 times already if it was already a thing. So let's just give it to him now before he retires, and it's going to line up for him to get that as well. And now finally, we have the Super Bowl prediction. I have Ravens versus the Packers. I'm sure I'm not the only guy who has this, especially post Micah Parsons trade, but it really is what I think is going to happen this year. So it would be a pretty wild matchup on both sides. Both rosters are very good and very filled out and very similarly constructed, actually, outside of the fact that Lamar is like this mobile elite QB and Jordan Love is still kind of proving himself as a bit of like a, improviser. But I do think the way at this point in the season, Matthew Golden will be a better wide receiver than Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman. I do truly feel that way. Parsons is the best defensive player in this game next to maybe Kyle Hamilton. And then LaFleur is the best coach in this game and just an overall higher offensive consistency. So a lot of times when I talk about Super Bowls and like playoff games, right, I kind of, you don't want to boil things down ever, but I feel like it's more interesting to talk about that way. It really is. And it's not like it doesn't reflect what's going on. So the key factors are your quarterback and your head coach. And then after that, it's defense just kind of as a whole and special teams lumped into that. So if you have like the best combination of those three, you're going to win that game, especially if it's in the playoffs because of how important those three are for playoff games. And did I mention offensive line? Offensive line is like its own category. That's where you get the Eagles' respect. I think the Ravens and Packers offensive line is pretty similar. They play well for their schemes, but they're not like elite or game breaking. The Ravens might take another step forward, whereas the Packers I feel like a lot more safe about. Coach, I'm definitely giving it to LaFleur. I like John Harbaugh, but Todd Monken and Zach Orr, I don't know. I just feel like Matt LaFleur runs the show a lot better, wins a lot more consistently. It's very close, but I just do feel like it's my opinion that I think he's a better coach. And then quarterback, it's like obviously you want to say Lamar, but like the way Lamar has played in the playoffs, like it's possible for him to have a bad game. Like it's not like he's like Mahomes and he shows up the same every time. Josh Allen typically shows up the same every time. Jalen Hurts even like typically shows up well in the playoff games he plays in. He did have that one blowout versus the Bucs, but I'll even be fair and say that was not the same Eagles team. I mean, they weren't missing everyone, but they were missing a lot. So ultimately, yeah, you got to give the edge to quarterback to the Ravens, but it's not like this, that's this crazy difference. I think Jordan Love is a good player. And on this team, he's probably going to be playing very efficiently. So I don't know. It's just like the offensive lines are like the same. The defenses, the same. But I almost want to say the Packers on paper should be better. But I think the coaching's better on the Ravens. And, so quarterback Ravens, defense, maybe tiny edge to the Packers, and offensive line even, and coaching I'm giving to the Packers. So it's like pretty much even, but then you got Matt LaFleur. I don't know. I feel like that's kind of what it's going to come down to in this game is who's going to have the best game plan. Obviously, there's going to be amazing players on both sides who are going to mess up each other's days and make great plays themselves. But I think LaFleur's coaching is going to put Jordan Love in the best position to win this game. He might not even have to do that much. I think Jacobs could have like 120 yards in this game, 2 rushing touchdowns. You get like 1 fluky play to like Tucker Kraft, and Matthew Golden helps you move the chains on 3rd and long. Also with Jordan Love's like extending the playability. I just think it's going to be really hard for Lamar to play his game with Parsons and this disruptive defensive line just completely blowing it up. I mean, it's going to be like when the Eagles' defensive line kind of shut down this Ravens offense last season. And I want to see the Ravens win a Super Bowl. I want to see Lamar win a Super Bowl. But I just think this Packers team made the move that is going to win them this year's Super Bowl. Micah Parsons was available, and they jumped on it. And I think he's going to have 1 strip sack, or it's Xavier McKinney getting an interception, or if it's just a batted pass at the line of scrimmage that gets picked off. Something's going to go wrong for the Ravens in this game, and the Packers are the team that just like capitalizes on that. So I see the Green Bay Packers winning this Super Bowl this season. There you have it. I have them winning. And I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you did enjoy, don't forget to drop a like and share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss more content just like this. Great news. The NFL season is finally here, and I can't wait to follow it with you guys. I want to thank you all so much for this offseason, for 1,000 subscribers, for all the support, for all of the comments in this whole first year of YouTube. I am hyped for this season. Thank you all so much again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.